atop the Colorado Rockies and from the coastal lowlands of the southeastern United States. You're listening to the Human Echoes Podcast, episode 100, with Tony Southcott and Albert Berg.
Hello and welcome to the 100th episode of the Human Echoes Podcast!
I'm Tony Southcott.
I'm Albert Berg, and joining us today, very special guest star of our podcast, the one and only, the angry man himself, Danny Brophy.
Hi!
You're not living up to your angry man standard.
There's no anger.
What was that?
That's making it worse. There's no anger there. There's no frustration. We can't, see you sitting there just staring at a Coors can, be like, motherfuckers.
I'm actually staring at a Rolling Rock bottle right now, so...
Oh, so that's it. You're just not drinking, the poor man's beer. That's almost poor man's beer.
Yeah, but what, Coors is a poor man's beer? What the hell?
Actually, Coors is made, a few miles from me, so it's not bad.
Lucky devil.
It's pretty bad, but it's not bad.
Yeah, Coors Light is just water to me now.
Start screaming when I start talking about Dredd. We'll get into that after a little bit.
Oh, to hell with Dredd. Can we talk about Guardians of the Galaxy, please?
We got to go spoiler free. We got to tread lightly on this.
Yeah, it just came out. I don't know what kind of people haven't seen it yet, but...
If you want, we could do an entire spoiler discussion after the main part of the podcast.
No. Bro brought it up. We'll just talk about it. There's plenty of stuff you can say without spoiling.
Yeah, if I knew the whole plot, I would still go into that movie and love it as much as I do. So, I don't know, but I'll try to tread lightly on it, but I'll let you guys start the conversation on that, because I'm sure you both have seen it as well.
Have you seen it?
And it's a rare situation where all three of us saw something on an opening weekend.
And we all liked it, too.
Yeah, we did. I feel like I'm the cynical bastard of the group. I didn't, unabashedly love it. There was some stuff that I was like... the story-wise, I felt like that it could have gone a little harder, a little deeper, or whatever. But the characters were all amazing, and it had a really great, fun tone. And I just
absolutely.
Had an amazing time with that. So,
my girl and I actually were saying this when we got out of the movie, where we both kind of went in thinking Groot the Tree would be our favorite character, or Rocket Raccoon, which was kind of the obvious one, but we both came up being Drax was the best character in that entire movie.
Drax was hilarious. His lines,
Batista.
His whole I don't do metaphor.
He's a literal race. His entire race is only literal.
My favorite line of the whole movie is when what's his face? The Star-Lord.
Go over his head.
Star-Lord.
Yeah, it's gonna go over his head. Yeah, it's
Nothing goes
over my head.
I would grab it. I have fast reflexes.
His delivery on that, obviously it's kind of a deadpan line, so it doesn't take super acting chops, but just to know the guy's a wrestler and he just sort of dropped that one. I mean, his acting in this movie really. I think that, number one, they did a good job of sort of casting him to his strengths.
Absolutely.
But even so, with what he had to work with, he did a really great job. And I thought, I really liked Rocket Raccoon and Groot and all the other ones too. But Batista was I would say, show stealer in the sense that he just came out of nowhere. I was like, wow, he's actually really funny.
Yeah, the only other thing that he's really been in that I know of is Man with the Iron Fist.
He's been in a couple small roles, but
he was in Riddick as well, the Vin Diesel one that came out earlier this year. He was kind of
I've not seen that one yet.
Yeah, you don't have to see it.
Strong endorsement.
I mean, you can if you want, but I've always thought those movies were vastly overrated. Everyone kind of talked about Pitch Black when it first came out. It's oh, this is really good. And I'm like, no, it's really not.
I didn't get into that enough to finish it. I mean, people have yelled at me how could you not finish this? It's just this. I mean, they're on a planet and this guy's a psychopath and he's really good at killing people. And then there's a thing and he has to help him with. I don't. How is this compelling? I didn't get into I didn't buy into the premise or the characters that much at all. So.
Yeah, I can see where some people praise it for being a fantastic B movie, and I do see its worth in that a bit, but it just people talk about this like it's kind of an underground, not classic, but like a really good movie that kind of got overlooked. And that original is not. The Chronicles of Riddick is just a goddamn mess. And Riddick was basically a remake of Pitch Black.
Is it a better remake?
I mean, the first half an hour of it almost plays like the Tom Hanks movie Castaway, where like he's just on his own on this desert planet. God damn it! Really? I think I'm going to be saying that a lot.
Yes,
today.
really.
You know who was in Chronicles of Riddick though? That's kind of related. Carl Urban in the helmet.
The great Carl Urban.
Speaking of overrated cult classic movies.
Oh boy.
This is another. Well, see, here's the thing. Like, I want to say right up front when we start talking about Dredd, okay. I had a really great experience tweeting with a number of my followers about the movie, and I found that many of them had an awareness of the movie and had thought more deeply about the movie than I had seen people discuss online. I had not encountered personally anything other than, man, that Dredd was an arrogant movie, wasn't it? And going into it with just that, like, it was a fun action movie, I said, no, there's a lot wrong with this guy. This is a horrible dystopian future, and, he's standing up for the people that have basically made it this way and has all this, like, way too much power, and I realized that was the point of the comic, but it was supposed to be satire, and I didn't get the satire in the movie at all. I didn't feel like it was satire.
Well, I don't think they really layered any satire into the movie.
Well, okay, see, that I didn't feel like they did either. However, I just wanted to say that when I was talking about, like, I have all these issues with the movie, a lot of people who did like the movie came out and said, we understand, we can see those issues, but we also, we have enough situational awareness of, what the movie is saying and like, that the fact that this is not actually okay, that it kind of increased my faith in the fans of it a little bit, but I wish I had seen that more discussion on that idea, because most of the time when I'm on Reddit or whatever and people are talking about just Dredd, they're just like, how come nobody likes this movie? I'm like, because it's about a psychopath who works for an awful government in an awful world who only is possibly marginally considered a hero because he's killing people who are worse than him. So that was my take on the movie.
All right, interesting take. Have you guys actually read the comic that this movie's based on?
I've read a few panels. But that's about it.
No, I can't afford to read comics. I'm sorry.
Oh, all right.
They're expensive. Like, come on, you pay like
go to a library.
They don't have Dredd in my library. They have Spider-Man. I've read some Spider-Man comics from the library.
Well,
my library doesn't have a comic section mostly, except for like in the kids area, which is not going to have Dredd.
Yeah, really. Why don't you just go like hide in the Barnes and Noble
Hicktown, nowhere,
like
USA.
All right, fair enough. I don't live.
Not everybody. You live in a place called Tauntaun. That's like bound to have good comics.
It's called Taunton, first off, and it's not that. I mean, there's a lot of libraries that are around me, and they all have a comic book section and a graphic novel section. But I'll say this about the comic book Judge Dredd. It started in the late 70s for the British magazine called 2000 AD, and you're right. It is a satire of kind of how Britain, especially under Margaret Thatcher, V for Vendetta kind of goes into this too, about how there's a fear like Britain was descending into like a sense of fascism, and this was supposed to be a satire of a Judge Dredd, where that's why Dredd in the comic is very much like how he is in the movie. He's very straightforward in his job. He doesn't just go. I don't think he goes around and randomly kills people. I've read several of the comics.
And I say psychopath. I'm not saying that he is just a random killer. I'm saying that he lacks emotion, that he lacks any kind of empathy for the people that he's working for, as far as I could tell from how he was portrayed in the movie.
Because he actually does say that when they go to Peach Trees, and he says to his partner, Anderson, when he asks Anderson, why'd you become a judge, and he gives kind of like a pat answer, and then he kind of tries to get her to say a little bit more, and then she gives an actual answer about how she grew up in a place like this, and like how she really thinks she can make a difference, and he kind of looks at her and just goes, admirable. And I felt like that said a lot about, like, there's kind of these little hints Anderson is more the fully fleshed character. She's almost the main character of the story. Dredd is almost a cipher of the story. But you get a lot of little details like that where you can kind of intuit that there is like a backstory to him that they're really hinting at, like that he's just lost everything in his life, or like that something terrible has happened in this man's life where all he has is his job as a judge. And he really adheres to the rules of that, and that's why later on in the film, can we spoil the movie?
No, I would rather not get too far into spoilers. Okay. I mean, you can talk, sort of in generalities.
If it's too bad, I can just bleep it out.
Okay.
When he goes later on in the movie where he really shows how much he's into being a judge and how strictly adheres to that, I kind of felt like that. I've kind of lost my point there.
You're talking about his backstory, and I wish that I don't know that you can give him a backstory and stay true to what the comic fans wanted. I really feel like that this is definitely a product of the comic, but without that sort of like edge of, hey, this is this is not how it's supposed to be. I lost that sort of aspect of it.
Well, Dredd was based on Clint Eastwood a lot, like especially the Man with No Name trilogy, The Good, Bad, the Ugly. And in those films, Eastwood his character didn't even have a name, didn't have any type of backstory, and that was kind of the point of Dredd, was that he was this cipher who was this one really indomitable beacon of, the truth, justice, and the Mega City One Way, I guess.
Yeah, but Mega City One isn't. Again, it's a bad place. The people are living in squalor, and you got to think that that's at least somewhat the government's fault.
Oh, absolutely.
And he's working for them, enforcing their laws. Who made these laws? There's no questioning of any of this stuff. It's just
it's not that kind of movie.
At the top of this building. I want it to be that. It needs to. I'm not saying it needs to have like some deep moral, but every movie is saying something. Every movie has a message that it's conveying, and I feel like that Dredd kind of drops the ball on having a message, on having taking that opportunity to have something deeper to say than just cool explosions, slow-mo, guys, woo.
Well, you also have to realize this is a hard R science fiction action film, and they probably really had to rely more on action and really propelling the story. I think this would make a great short story. It feels like everything is kind of cut to the bone. There's very little detail in the little pieces that you get. They do kind of give you a sense enough of the world where you're not completely lost. They don't throw a lot of tech speak at you. I mean, there's the recyc, there's the ISO cubes, but you get enough of a sense of the world. And I feel like that this was supposed to be, according to the producers and the writer of the film, this was supposed to be the beginning of a trilogy, and they were going to do 2 more films and really open up the world and really get into a lot of the more sweeping stories that were in the comics that really got into the satire, got into the political and sociological overtones, almost to like a Night of the Living Dead point, where that had a very political stance on, Vietnam War at the time, and the sequels would more emulate that fashion. But this was just supposed to be kind of like a gateway drug to those next 2 movies.
Well, the next 2 movies don't appear to be happening anytime soon anyway.
Yeah, because the movie bombed.
Yeah.
Which is a shame.
It's a shame for any movie to bomb. I listen to some movie news people, and there's a lot of people who talk about movies they even, just anticipating them, man, I hope this movie bombs, I hope it sucks. And no, you want every movie to be great, and you want it to make money. Even if it's a bad movie, you want it to make money, because that means they can make other movies with that money that maybe you'll like. So I'm not happy that it bombed, but I understand. I feel like part of it may have been, I don't actually think this is an unappealing movie to a large sort of segment of the movie-going population. I wonder if it may have been also partly, sort of poor advertising and whatnot that caused...
Oh, definitely that.
By the way, are you still with us, Tony?
Yeah, I'm just...
Yeah, I know. I was about to say, Tony, comments?
I'm just listening.
Hold on, my wife needs me. Give me a second. She's...
Right. He's insane. I think Dredd was but you know what? He really does bring up a good point about, just people telling him that Dredd was a really good movie, because hype is so it's very dangerous when it comes to. I'm really over dramatizing that, but hype can really ruin your appreciation of a movie or a TV show.
Definitely can. Like where you just get so much anticipation. That's part of the reason why I went to Guardians of the Galaxy so soon, is just because I knew that there was like a hype train rolling, and I wasn't really reading a whole lot about it. I wanted to experience it before I got completely swept under. Oh, it's the best Marvel movie ever, and things like that.
And it totally is. Like I came out of that saying to my girl, like, you know what, Marvel, just cancel the Avengers 2, cancel any plans for any sequels like Iron Man. Just do Guardians of the Galaxy movies from here on out. That's all you got to do.
They're just definitely. I couldn't even get over how perfect that movie was. Like, I know that you guys are saying that that it had some inadequacies and everything, but I didn't even, or I was bothered by it. Well, I want to bring up some things about Ronan to Al that I don't think he's realized as well, from one of our favorite actors from back in the day. Yourself.
Oh yeah,
I'm back.
Hi, Al.
Welcome back, sir.
Sorry about that. My wife was having some issues with the Allen wrench, so.
And the man had to take care of it.
Yes.
Or not. Wow. That silence hurt.
I know what to do with the tools, all right?
Oh, not insulting you, my friend.
He's good with the L-shaped objects.
To be honest with you, I'm so much not a man, I have no idea what an Allen wrench is. You could show it to me, and I'll be like, yeah, that's great.
Really? It's those little hex head things?
The only thing I know about an Allen wrench is that Tom Morello of Rage Against the Machine used it on his guitar when he played the song People of the Sun. That's the only thing I know about an Allen wrench.
Have you ever put together a piece of furniture or an entertainment center?
Yeah, didn't you put together the monolith?
The model. I don't think I used any wrenches for that. That was just a simple Walmart bookcase that I screwed in with screws and screwdrivers.
Oh, okay. A lot of times they have Allen wrenches in those, and they'll even provide the little Allen wrench in the kit to use. So I'm surprised, but that's okay. Yeah,
it's an L-shaped hexagonal tool.
I guess this is all going in the podcast now. So, 100th episode, it got interrupted by my baby.
Danny and I have actually had some good conversations about him being not a man. Quite often, actually. A lot of times whenever I'm drinking whiskey, I'm like, yeah, I just put together a dining set for my girlfriend for her move, and he's like, I don't even know what that means.
I'm just like, yeah,
he doesn't know what a girlfriend is.
Aw, yes I do. Surprise!
It's just the one that's perpetually disappointed.
No,
I guess that could also be a mother.
Nah, my girl isn't really disappointed. I'm slowly learning just the basic stuff. I know how to change a tire, but
Do you know how to use jumper cables?
Yes.
I was super disappointed in some of my friends recently because the new guy on our crew came up to me and he was telling me the story of how he had to help 4 people on the crew that works with me at Walmart get somebody's truck jumped. And I'm standing there. He names off a bunch of people, and I'm standing there with my best friend, Brantley, who does some of the Let's Play videos with me. And I was like, they didn't really know how to use a jumper cable? And Brantley's like, I didn't know how to use a jumper cable either. I'm like, man!
It's red to red.
It's color-coded. You put the red on the red and the black on the black, and you connect the live battery last.
That's like not being able to understand how to plug in a USB cable.
It's slightly less, not like that, but, yeah. Anyway, I was really disappointed. I was like, who doesn't know how to use a jumper cable? But apparently, 4 or 5 people that I work with don't know how to use them. And they're not indoorsy kind of computer gaming people, all of them either. So it was very surprising to me that they didn't know that.
I only learned about that when my first car I was 19. I had a 1985 Lincoln Town Car, and I didn't do anything to it. And the battery, probably I jumped once a week because I was just too much of a lazy bastard to go and get a new battery. So I learned really quick how to jump a car. And when I got other cars, it was just second nature in case they ever needed a jump because I used to smoke a lot of pot, so I would constantly forget to turn the headlights off or the dome light inside off. So
I love how that story started. I used to smoke a lot of pot, and
I did.
That's the beginning of every great story. I used to smoke a lot of pot, and
then I started a business. I was so sad this week. Like, I had to jump my 68 Firebird for the last time this week because we sold it.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I love that car, but it was just like we couldn't put the time or the love into it that it needed. Like, I know a little bit about cars. I can change out parts and all that stuff. I'm not that great at diagnosing issues. But, like, we replaced the radiator, we replaced several other things, and we just had to sell it this weekend. And we made a pretty tidy profit, like, all of a sudden there's like commas and stuff surrounding things, but it's just gone. Like it was my first car. Like, just it's weird to think that like I had this piece of history that was like older than the moon landing, like this just beautiful piece of American machinery, and it was mine, and now it's just gone.
I still have my first car, Tony. 1990 Ford Tempo.
I guess that is a piece of American history, too. It's 20 years old this year.
He's still driving
vintage.
That.
I am.
Does it have an 8-track player?
No.
In 94, come on.
No, 90, but still, no. It was state-of-the-art back then. The weird thing is it has less than 100,000 miles on it.
Wow.
It says 64,000 miles on this, on my 1990 Ford Tempo, because I got it from my grandma, who put 20,000 miles on it as of, like, 8 years ago.
She only drove it to church on Sundays.
If that, yeah. It was very light. They didn't like technology. Her and my grandpa, like, she didn't like elevators. She went to visit my grandpa in the hospital one time, because it had an elevator, and that freaked her out. She's like, no, not going back. He'll get better and come home. Eventually he did.
Yeah, you know what's going to make him come home? Technology.
Well, I mean, I think she was grateful for technology. It wasn't like and all these things. It freaked her out. The stuff that she didn't understand, buttons and whatnot, because she grew up in the Great Depression and she had nothing. And then, you come into this world where everything's digitized and electrical, and she's like, I didn't even have electricity. Her mom, like, walked barefoot through the winter. Practically, like, the big present that her dad got her mom one year was shoes to wear in the winter.
But so it's not like... Oh, sorry.
No, that was it, basically. Like, that she would go out and milk the cows and stuff, and, like, he's like, man, you should have some shoes to work on that. And I feel like I'm telling this in such a way that it implies that he was lazy and didn't do that stuff. I'm pretty sure he helped out, too, but...
Yeah.
For whatever reason, she would go barefoot, like, her feet was super thick and, like, resilient.
But it's not like technology went from
9.
It's not like technology went from a rotary phone to an iPhone in like 6 months. Like, technology has progressed over decades. Like, unless like she fell into a time warp and then went to that hospital like 60 years beyond like where she's from. That's just that's amazing to me that she was freaked out by an elevator.
It may have also been too some claustrophobia as well that she was.
All right, you know what? I can definitely understand that then. All right.
I mean, I'm not her psychologist, so I can't, and she's dead now, so I really can't dig too deep into, what her issues were. But my dad was, what? I'm just saying.
I just like how, Al, you were just like, well, she's dead now, so I can't dig too deep into it. It's like, there's a graveyard joke in there, and I'm not going to make it.
Taste. We are very tasteful here on the Human Echoes podcast, as everyone knows.
Your look was a severed hand.
But like, it's not... I don't think there's a certain level of technology that you could skip over. Like, she still had a gas stove, which I realize a lot of people still have gas stoves, but she lived very, very simply up until her death. She had electricity. She'd turn the lights on and stuff, but...
She just got so used to not having it that she didn't...
she grew up without that stuff. Like, her entire formative years, from like 0 to 20 were basically in the Great Depression.
And that's pretty much my grandparents as well. Like, my grandma didn't have electricity at her place until she moved in with my grandpa at like 19. He said that was like the most important thing he ever witnessed in his life was electricity being brought out to the farms and everything out there. Like, he's got a lot of stories about that. He's afraid of computers, but he loves almost every other aspect of technology. Like, he loves his Cadillac. Even though he has macular degeneration, is almost blind, he still straps on the leather gloves and goes flying down the road in that thing.
Nice. But he wears gloves for that, too.
Yeah, he has, like, a scally cap and, like, leather gloves that he straps on and just, like, gets in his purple Cadillac and flies.
A purple Cadillac? Damn.
Yep. CTS. It's probably the fastest, nicest car I've ever driven. Thing just glides. I was going about 106 on I-25 out here, and it felt like I was going maybe 60. Like, it was just so smooth.
Oh, wow.
Has, like, a supercharger button, too. You just hit it, and everything gets even, like, better.
Why would you not just have that button on all the time?
Gas mileage.
It gets better button. Push here. It's like, why is this just not on? Why don't we have a brick laying on this button?
Gas mileage.
What are we waiting for?
Well, I'm going 106, but that's still a little slow. Oh, look, there's a button here that's going to supercharge this little bastard to 200,000 miles an hour or something.
Oh, you can get the CTS V, which is basically the same model with a Corvette engine in it.
Yeah. Do that.
All right. Now you're talking like Klingon right now. I don't know anything about that.
Okay. Well, I just said no. Here's the deal, Tony. You just say yeah, and then you're out.
You just you gotta get it like guttural.
Talking about either.
Yeah, it's man stuff. You know, it's coming up next. We're gonna talk about steak and football.
How about them Bears?
How about this? By the time this airs, the Broncos will have already played their first preseason game.
Nobody wants to hear about sports ball.
Yeah, no one wants to hear about Easter Island head Peyton Manning.
I see. I didn't even know Peyton Manning played for the Broncos.
Do you not? Al, do you watch any type of sports? Like,
no.
You live it. Yeah. All right. Yeah, I've totally. Tony, I'm sorry. I've kind of fallen out of favor with sports. But then again, that's because I've seen every one of my teams win a championship in the last 10 years. So, it's like, what's the point of watching it anymore?
Yeah, it's a shame you just can't get over Joseph Devin's Giants.
I know, but my 3 rings that I don't have and I can look at on Tom Brady's fingers, they just look so nice.
Hey, we got a pair too. It's okay.
Yeah, with John Elway. God, you know what? I will be honest with you. We'll get out of the sports in a second, but I felt so bad for Tony when I watched the Super Bowl. And within like 3.5 seconds, it was like, well, Seattle just won this goddamn game.
Yeah, I actually had talked to people about that before. It's like, if we get a turnover on the first drive, it's over. And then all of a sudden, balls over the head.
I felt bad. I didn't even start watching it until after church. And I came in and I was like, what's going on? I'll go cheer for Tony's team. And they're like down. And he's like, we're still holding out hope. I remember sending him a text. And I was like, okay. And
I was like, if we score a touchdown every 4 minutes for the rest of time, we might catch up.
If Drax was the quarterback, then he would have got that ball over his head.
Whatever, Drax was like the least effective fighter in that entire movie. All he did was charge in and get beat up.
He was fighting the main guy, the main villain of the movie.
I know, but he was so ineffective. He was so ineffective against Ronan.
Here's what I think the issue with that is. That they have something called the Wharf Limit or whatever, where I forget exactly what it is. It's on TV Tropes. I'll try to link it or something. But whenever,
all right.
Whenever, if they want to show that somebody's like really hardcore in Star Trek: The Next Generation, they would have somebody beat Worf. And it became this thing where Worf was supposed to be really tough and hardcore, and yet every single episode, practically, he was getting beat up by somebody so that they could show that he was tough, and that at some point it turns out, like, maybe he's not actually that tough, even though he's supposed to, he is.
That's a good point. Now that I think about it, Worf really did get his ass kicked a lot in The Next Generation.
I saw Michael Dorn at Comic-Con. He's huge.
Do you know his voice is it is so deep right now because of playing Worf for so long that it just changed his voice? Like, apparently he had just a normal kind of voice.
Sounded like you?
I have a normal voice, or do I have a really deep voice?
No, I was no. You have a very normal voice.
Oh, okay.
I was making fun of your somewhat higher register.
Yeah, your voice matches your skill with tools. Is all he's trying to say.
I believe I'm being insulted here now.
That was the point. Yes, it kind of went over your head. I feel bad now.
Oh, it certainly did.
I had to explain it.
I'm not Drax. So, all right, that's the third time we've referenced that.
Speaking of which, did you recognize who Ronan was?
As far as the actor?
Yeah.
No.
Oh.
He was the Red Bandit from The Fall.
I don't know that I would have recognized that anyway.
Did you recognize who Nebula was?
Smoking hot even while blue.
Her and Jillian.
Yes, Amy Pond from Doctor Who.
I was like, man, she gets mean when the Doctor's not around.
That's how the Doctor likes it.
Unofficial sequel to Doctor Who. She got picked up from Earth on an alternate universe.
I actually loved her so much in this, and I obviously loved her like everyone else did in Doctor Who. That like I kind of was like sitting there being like, damn, I kind of wish she played Gamora, even though Zoe Saldana did.
I actually thought the same exact thing. I wanted her to be the good guy, although she's probably better as a bad bitch.
Did you just want, like, the blue-skinned one to be good? Or just her character?
No, I wanted Amy Pond to play Gamora. I didn't. I even though Zoe Saldana, I loved in everything that she's done. Like, she's one of those actresses that even when the movie's bad, like, she still gives, I think, a very good performance. Like, she did this movie called Columbiana, where she was like almost like kind of a Jason Bourne kind of hitman. The movie's not that great, but she like really, really gives it her all, and she's great as Uhura in the Star Trek reboots, and she was great in this. She's great in Avatar, but because I love myself Amy Pond, I was like, I kind of wish she was like in this more, because Nebula is only in it for 5-6 minutes really, and every scene she's fantastic in.
I really didn't know.
She'll be coming back for like the Avengers and such.
Yeah,
better.
I really didn't know what to expect as much of her as we got. Honestly, like she's in like half a second of the trailer, and I had to pause it and be like, "Yep, that looks like her with a shaved head."
Oh, yep.
And then she actually turns out to be a major. I thought that her character was pretty central to the plot, so I wasn't offended at all that she didn't get it.
Oh no. I'm not saying it's not an offense or anything. It was just kind of like because I love her, Karen Gillan, so much that I just wanted to see more of her. So it was either like, well, give me more Nebula or switch the roles.
Are you going to watch her new sitcom that she's in now, Selfie?
Hell yes. It's going to be terrible. It's going to get canceled after 5 episodes, and I'm going to watch every damn second of it.
Okay. Is she doing an American accent in that? I can't tell from the trailers. Like, they have her talk really weird for some of it. And I'm like, is she just talking over her English accent? Or is she actually supposed to be from England? Okay, Scottish. What?
Yeah.
It's not a whatever. Oh, wow. If someone from Scotland heard you say that, you would be dead in 5 seconds.
Well, luckily, our listenership in Scotland is not up this week.
Actually, our listenership in Scotland is pretty good if you look at the numbers. It's higher than our UK listenership. And it's a much smaller area.
Not anymore.
She's one of our best, you bastard. That was my attempt at a Scottish accent.
That wasn't even an accent.
I'm a dumb American, all right? It doesn't matter to me. Like, she's from that island area over there that isn't on Europe main part.
Well, did Nebula have any, she had, that kind of Vox vocalization to her voice because she's supposed to be, part android, I guess, or something. They didn't really get into that in the movie, but I didn't notice her really having any type of accent, so I don't know. I'm sure she'll pull off a nice accent for the 5 episodes that Selfie will be on for.
For this one, it felt like she was almost doing a Sith-type warrior for, the new Star Wars series more than, a Marvel character. Mm. That's what it felt like to me. If you would have given her, a red lightsaber, it would have been perfect.
And wouldn't it be weird if the dark elf guy came back and then her and the Doctor were on the same in the same movie together again? But not as the same characters, obviously. That would be freaky.
Yeah, I keep wondering about
Eccleston played the Ninth Doctor was in Thor: The Dark World, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's what I was referencing. I'm sorry. I should have been more specific.
No.
I'm way out there. I still don't know what the hell you guys are talking about with Doctor Who.
It's there's this guy who has a space station that's also a time machine.
Yeah, he's got a TARDIS.
He's got a spaceship.
Does lots of one-off episodes and makes British women flood the basement.
What? Show you what?
That was a genitalia reference.
That's the equivalent of blue balls, flooding the basement.
I'm glad I know that. I mean, thanks for Thanks for.
That might not even make it into the episode, judging by your guys' reaction.
Judging by the reaction, you made me silent. That's how I was like, what the hell?
I mean, I picked up on what he was saying like half a second later, but I kind of wanted to see what Brophy was going to do.
Oh, it was so over my head. I was like, it's like flooding the basement. Like, does he think he's a plumber?
He is.
Yeah, I spent like 8 years as a plumber.
Yeah, Doctor Who's a Mario ripoff.
Oh no! I thought you meant Doctor. Okay, Tony was a plumber. I thought you meant Doctor. I didn't realize you were talking about Doctor Who.
No, I thought that's what he was talking about. That he thought that like Doctor Who, like yeah, because you get a doctorate in plumbing. Like my brain just went completely left.
It's called a master's degree, or not a master's degree, a master's license. You don't even get degrees.
Oh. Well,
you're going. What are you talking about?
Well, to bring it back, Tony, watch Doctor Who. You'll be fine. Don't worry. You like science fiction. Believe me, this is like one of the. Excuse me, that burp went over. Sorry. That's one of the touchdowns of science fiction.
A lot of the touchstones of science fiction aren't that great in retrospect, though. Here's a question for you, since you are a fellow Doctor Who fan.
Yes.
What episode would you say that Tony should watch to jump into?
Blink.
Really?
Yeah. It kind of sucks to say to have him watch the best one of probably the entire series. I mean, I liked when Matt Smith took over as the 11th Doctor because they kind of, not completely, but you could start with Matt Smith's first episode and not have seen anything beforehand, and they do a very good job of giving you the entire backstory, like what you need to know for the story going forward. Like, yeah, you want to watch the whole series from when it restarted in 2005, but
there's a lot of stuff in those early episodes that is not great, though.
The Victory of the Daleks, that World War II episode with them, yeah, that one is...
That was so disappointing.
Well, Mark Gatiss wrote that episode, and he generally does not write good episodes, but he did. He got better. Like, I think some of his best ones was in the last Matt Smith season. But Mark Gatiss is also he co-writes Sherlock with Stephen Moffat, who currently runs Doctor Who, and he also plays Mycroft, Sherlock's brother. Have you guys seen the show Sherlock?
I have it on my list to watch.
It's worth watching. Trust me.
Go all Benedict Cumberbatch with it.
That one isn't like that one's not like Doctor Who, where you have to be like, I've got to figure out all this backstory and like sort of muscle my way into it somehow because it's all weird and like, I mean, it's Sherlock Holmes. Watch it. It's good stuff.
All right, I'll watch that. Is it better than the Robert Downey Jr. version?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely more of a adherence to the original stories before. Who wrote the Sherlock Holmes stories? The name is escaping me right now.
Sir Arthur Conan Doyle.
Yeah, Doyle wrote the stories for a while and then killed the character off. And they pretty much use a lot of the stories from before he killed the character off. He got tired of writing the character, and then when he brought the character back, the stories weren't as good. So a lot of especially the first two seasons, there are only 3 episodes. They're an hour and a half each. And you have Benedict Cumberbatch as Sherlock. You have Martin Freeman, who is Bilbo Baggins in those god-awful Hobbit movies.
I just finished the Hobbit book, like, this week. It was pretty awesome.
Yeah, the book is fantastic, but did you sit there thinking, like, oh, gee, I wish they would turn this into 3 3-hour-long movies?
No, but I'll tell you one thing that Martin Freeman is really good, and that's the new Fargo series.
You know what? I've watched that first episode. I've watched the first half an hour of it like 5 times, and for some reason I get up to go do something or I look something up and then I never come back to it. I don't know why. For some reason I cannot get into that one.
I want to say about the Sherlock series, you can skip the middle episode of the first 2 seasons.
Absolutely.
Those are both kind of just...
And they're both written by Mark Gatiss.
Yeah. Okay, though. Here, I wanted to come to Mark Gatiss' defense because he wrote one of my favorite Doctor Who things ever.
Can I guess?
What?
Screw it. I can't think of the one that you... No, was it...
Describe it, then.
Was it the one on... Oh, the Red Menace one? When they're in Victorian England? And... No? this isn't the one.
No, it's not. I just wanted you to keep going. It's not a Doctor Who episode proper. It's the Adventure in Time and Space, where they do the biopic.
Oh, that was fantastic.
I know, right?
That was really good. And David Bradley did an amazing job. David Bradley, for anybody who doesn't know, he was Walder Frey in Game of Thrones, and he was also
a great first Doctor. He's playing the actor who played the first Doctor, and sort of telling his story. He did such a great job with that story, especially because of how it jumps around from character to character, and yet you never lose that sense of sort of.
And it doesn't
being there with the characters.
It doesn't focus on the really the show, Doctor Who. Like really, it actually focuses more on the people making the show, where William Hartnell had played like a lot of really stern characters, and he looked at this character as like, oh, this is something fun I can do. This was something he can get into, and his health got in the way of him really playing the character, so he had to step away from it. And then that's when they came up with the regeneration idea, because the show had been so popular that they couldn't really just cancel the show. So that's when Patrick Troughton, the second Doctor, took over, and they came up with the whole regeneration thing.
That was so heartbreaking, especially the scenes where he is like the main original showrunners have moved on. And he's, still playing the Doctor there, and he knows more about the set than anybody else does, and he's just frustrated and old and, can't remember his lines, and all these young people are just kind of, scurrying around, and he's, you can tell he's sort of lost, something.
There's a great little nerdy moment in there, too, when he wants to come up with, particular ways to use the consoles of the TARDIS, and he says, you have to figure, this switch has to do the same thing every single time I say it, because people at home are going to notice that stuff. And I thought that was just a great little reference to really nerds who would notice that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's kind of like how Will Wheaton, whenever he was on Star Trek, always had the same paths mapped out for whenever he had to do things on the show, or Gordy did, and various other people did as well.
That was I was just thinking of him sitting at the console of the Enterprise. They also did that for, and this is the first reference, and I'm really proud of the fact that it took 45 minutes to reference this, but they also did that in Alien, where when they were landing the ship, they all came up with their own, a particular way of hitting each button and each switch, so that it actually, even though it doesn't really come off in the film, it gives it more of a believability for the world, I guess. But yeah, Tony,
it helps them. I think it helps the actor to get into the role to say okay, this does something, and I'm going to make sure that it does it the same way every time.
But Al, I'm totally agree with you. That was a really, really good movie.
So I'm pretty sure that was him that wrote that.
Oh yeah, it definitely was.
So I can forgive him a lot of sort of mediocre Doctor Who episodes, because he wrote one of the best sort of Doctor Who related things, in my opinion. And
it was a nice love letter to it, but not you had to be a complete Doctor Who nerd to love the movie. There was just more of hey, this is something that people really, really love, and this is the beginnings of it, and it's lasted for half a century. Even though it was canceled in '89, it comes back. I believe it was '89 it got canceled, and then it came back in 2005. But it was always a thing that was looked upon as a very important piece of science fiction.
Everybody getting a bonus discussion about an Adventure in Time and Space. Came to talk about Dread. We hit that for 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Now you guys get there was a sneak attack. Doctor Who all up in here. That was the purpose of getting Brophy on.
I kind of feel weird about this because Tony's been relatively quiet, and Al and I are actually getting along. And I actually was thinking to myself today, what if Al and I just start shouting at each other about stuff?
Apparently, we're on the same wavelength. Start shouting, Tony.
Al,
yes,
thinks that Alien is a mediocre movie.
Yes, I remember that. I remember that tweet. Hey, you know what? He's entitled to the opinion. However wrong he is.
I'm the producer here. Do I have to really go reality show and start coercing you? Do I have to treat you guys like Duck Dynasty and get some sort of argument going where you tell him he done lost his redneck and you got to go in and do this big old fight because we've been hyping it for 4 episodes? Come on, now.
Can I say something about Alien? I appreciate it on an artistic level. I really do understand that, it's a masterful feat of cinematic, filmmaking, and, that everything on it is well done. I appreciate it sort of intellectually. It does not compel me in the way that I want to be compelled by a movie. And
we were talking about this whenever you had to go take care of your son and Ashley, that you kind of had it overhyped, and how hype can kind of taint how you view a movie or how you view anything, really.
Well, especially when you watch a movie that is looked upon as a classic, like not only in science fiction but in horror, and plus it's a movie that's been out since 1979, and if you have never seen it, inevitably there's going to be a letdown, especially when how cribbed it's been and how ripped off it is. Jaws is the same way. Even Aliens sequel, Aliens, is very much ripped off. It basically invented the first person shooter genre for video games. So, people go into it now, they're going to watch Alien and think, oh my God, this is so slow, it's ridiculous. But with a lot of classic movies, at least for me, when I watch them, especially if I haven't seen one, I watched one from 1960 called The Apartment, and it's considered one of the greatest films ever made. And I can get in that mindset of, at the time this was groundbreaking. It's why I actually do like Citizen Kane. Even though that movie's been ripped off and it's always looked upon as the greatest movie of all time, yeah, today that's not a really, really good movie, but I can appreciate the fact, like Al said, that it is a really great movie, but I can find great enjoyment in it as I watch it and just kind of picture myself just being like, oh my God, if I went to see this in the 1930s, if I saw Night of the Living Dead when it first came out, it would still blow my mind. So I do kind of get that excitement of it. I've just been around movies all my life that I can kind of look at a film objectively, but then subjectively from placing myself in that time frame of it.
I had sort of a similar experience recently, and I think some of it's about maturity. Mm-hmm. You just got to get, there's a certain point in your life when you're 15 or 16 or whatever that you don't need to watch. I mean, unless you've had some serious, hardcore, movie history upbringing, you're probably not you're going to want to watch Transformers and, whatever, Pacific Rim and stuff, and not the, whatever action movie. You're not going to dig deep into sort of the more visual stuff. But I went and saw some clips recently from the 1954 Godzilla, the old black and white Godzilla, and just looking at that was sort of wow, this is really good.
Yeah. Did you watch it without the Americanized Raymond Burr scenes added to it? Did you watch?
I didn't watch the whole thing, honestly. This was some bits. I want to go back and rewatch it. I will say though, I know that people hate on the Raymond Burr thing. I think that was honestly a stroke of genius to put him in there and to recontextualize it in that way, rather than doing dubs like they did with all the rest of them that they brought to America.
It totally took me out of the movie watching it with the Raymond Burr scenes, because you can tell even with the film stock and how the film looked, how different it was shot every scene that Raymond Burr's in, as opposed to what the actual Godzilla movie is.
Well, you can see that in a lot of things that have been brought over from Japan. If you watch the cutscenes from Power Rangers, it's completely different actors, different sizes, different scenes, different sets, different even the film is just grainier and it doesn't work right. And even whenever they're doing something really important, they have to use those cutscenes to just it's good enough for kids, people won't notice or care.
And to be fair, I haven't watched Godzilla all the way through in a while. I'm just talking about, because I've been going back and watching clips of Godzilla with my kid, and I don't watch the whole movie because, for one thing, most of those movies are not great. I'm sorry if you're a big fan of Godzilla, but a lot of Godzilla movies have some issues with, how they get started. But the sort of the monster fights are awesome. Some more than others, but. So I skip forward to the 1 hour mark when everything starts kicking off and just watch the fights with him. And somewhere in there I had seen just some clips of the original Godzilla, but all of that stuff is really impressive, honestly.
What was the giant trash monster, the one that fought Godzilla?
Hedorah.
Hedorah?
Yep.
Was that any good, or was that a pretty ridiculous fight?
I mean, all of them are kind of ridiculous in one aspect or another, but Hedorah had some interesting aspects to it. Because there's one part where Godzilla, gets dropped into. For one thing, he blinds Godzilla with like radiation, and Hedorah is a lot creepier than a lot of the other Godzilla monsters because you see him directly kill people. Like, he just squirts them with his radioactive stuff and they fall down dead. Most other monsters you don't actually see directly kill anyone. So Hedorah is kind of different in that aspect. You were going to say something, Brophy?
I was just going to ask, in the middle of you talking about Godzilla, if you were still talking about the original one or the remake that came out this year.
No, I was talking because that one hasn't really
about your kid. You were saying like you were showing clips of your kid, so I didn't know if you were talking about the original one or the remake.
No, I'm talking about the old, not even the original one, just like all like through the '60s.
Yeah,
and some of the newer ones.
Yeah, some of those are, and I actually really liked in the remake that from this year that they kind of modeled how Godzilla moved based on if it was actually a man in a suit. And I like the fact, even though this was a much maligned aspect of that movie, that he's almost like a cameo in his own movie.
Yeah, I don't understand the hatred of that movie. Honestly,
no, I
hear people yelling about it. I'm like, first of all, have you seen any of the old Godzilla movies? If you're any kind of fan of Godzilla at all, you know that they have all this crappy like character stuff that takes forever to get through, and this is way better than any of that stuff. There's action in between all the way through. All the people are interesting when they are on screen, to me anyway. And I didn't have an issue with the Muto action scenes. I mean, I guess people were mad because the Muto stuff wasn't Godzilla, but I really enjoyed the parts where the Mutos were on screen.
But how worth it was it when you got your first look at Godzilla, like that foot-to-head pan up, and then he does his scream? Like, when that happened, when I saw it on like a Sunday night, and it was a packed theater, and there was a silence in that theater after he yelled, where everyone was just kind of like, wow. Like, I was awed by the movie. I was impressed by the movie, and that I've not had that in a long, long time. And it hasn't really been a big-budget blockbuster movie that provided a sense of awe.
I was pumping my arms up and down and, like, trying not to scream in joy when that happened.
Oh, at the end of the movie... At the end of the movie, when he fights the Mutos, like, there was two parts that got almost a standing ovation from the crowd.
Yeah, and we don't want to spoil that for people who haven't seen it, but...
I won't, but...
I am so disappointed I didn't get to see that again. I'm so disappointed. I mean, I can see it on Blu-ray or DVD or whatever, but I wish there was a second-run theater somewhere around here I could watch Godzilla again. Because, like, more than any other film I've seen this year, even Guardians of the Galaxy, that's the one I wanted to go back and see a second time. I got more enjoyment out of that movie than any movie I've gotten out of this year. And I don't know that it's the best movie of the year, but I had so much visceral fun watching that movie. Yeah,
they did. Gareth Edwards, who also did. Did you guys do a review of Monsters?
Yeah, a few weeks back, about a month ago.
Well, I was actually talking to Tony last night, and I'll tell you this, Al, and I'll tell the listeners too. I actually find it very difficult to listen to you guys most of the time because I do have kind of an access to you both where like I can talk to you both, but like when I listen to the show, I actually find myself like talking to, like, if I'm listening to it in my car or in my headphones, where I'll start like answering stuff or talking like I'm actually on the show, and it was actually getting really annoying.
Joseph Devon does that on Twitter every time.
Yeah, he just sends a barrage. And like the more ridiculous the show gets, the more caps get thrown out there. Sometimes it'll be like 14, 15 tweets, just like anger.
Like and like usually if I start tweeting you guys, I do try to listen to, like, at the very least I'll download every episode, so I do try to listen to it, but it just gets so hard because I find myself talking to it.
Well, you're on now, Danny.
I know.
On the episode, you're living the dream. Are you in your car? You need to be in your car driving around just yelling.
Yes,
you're wrong!
You're like our 5th interview person? 6th guest on the show, something like that?
Yeah,
you're part of a very exclusive club, and oddly enough, Bill Oberst just tweeted us while we were like talking. So
I was going to say,
everything's coming together.
What did he say?
He was just saying that he enjoyed our time because we've got a bunch of listeners compiling a top 10 list of our 10 best episodes.
Oh, cool.
And one of his interviews should definitely be on. You guys did a really good job interviewing him, and I like the fact that he he wasn't like, this is what my career is like. Like, he was just very like, hey, you guys like my shit. Like, let's chat about it. So I really did like those ones.
He's incredibly accessible. He's always talking to fans. He's always out there doing his thing. And he says, like, that's basically his life. He's all about making the movies, then promoting the movies, and just promoting things to fans, talking to everybody. Mm. We had to cut a little bit out of his interview because it, like, got into some personal details about, like, interactions he's had with fans and everything and how strange it can get sometimes.
You cut those out? Those would probably been like the most fascinating things. I know
it hurt me to cut it out. Like he was. Oh,
all right.
Yeah, if it was just like, if it was all positive stuff, but he was like, sometimes I have to deal with some kind of weird people, and we didn't want to have him like, and he didn't want to be. I understood like why you would want not to be like, man, some of my fans get a little bit, sort of heavy on me sometimes, but I deal with it because
every like kind of horror movie icon or like really anything of like a genre has fans that are like that.
Yes, but I'm just saying, I totally respect his want to sort of not air out that dirty laundry. So
all right, you know what?
We cut that out.
It was still fun for us to have the conversation.
Yes, it was.
I would love to hear some of the weird fan stories. That kind of stuff always. Really, really. It's just some like kind of awkward Galaxy Quest kind of meeting with a fan.
I always wonder about that. Like, what if there's a certain level of like maybe there's some kind of a mental issue, or people don't understand boundaries. Like what drives people to be like that? Like you have people on the internet, right? That'll even just don't understand social boundaries at all. They don't understand and I don't know, maybe it's the sort of you come across differently in text than you think you do. You feel like you can act differently. Maybe it's the comfort of anonymity.
It's straight up the anonymity. Like if you want to see how people really are, give them a mask. Like you see like a reflection of all the bitterness and hate and all the other crap that's just built up in their life, and they just spew it out at other people. Like especially big targets. Like I'm not one to like defend Beyonce or anything like that. And I was just linked to this just to see what people said about her on her Instagram photos. It's some of the most vile, nasty, horrible things you could ever say to a person. And almost none of these people would say anything like that to her face. But because they look at their life as this complete failure, and like they just have to throw that vitriol or however you pronounce it, like just out
vitriol.
There. Yeah. They just it's like their own crap boils over, and they can't handle how boring and dull and terrible their lives turned out, mostly by their own fault. So they have to just send it out into the world.
I saw a really great comment about that on Reddit recently. Was somebody calling out the Rooster Teeth guys, specifically the Achievement Hunter crew, that saying that you brought up in your some of your emails. No, I'm sorry, your videos recently that talking about fans talking bad about you, and why do you bring that up? And he came out. Jeff personally came onto the forum, and he's like, look guys, we don't attack anybody personally. But if we bring up that fans may or may not like something in a video, or that you guys talk trash about us, it's in a very general way. You got to realize we personally deal with people like tweeting to Matt, who's the CEO of the company, that he should fire us because somebody cheated in a fake game inside of a real game that doesn't matter. and like we have to deal with a lot of this stuff, and we still love doing what we do, but if we reference some of this to just kind of blow off steam, you gotta like let it go. It's not that big of a deal. We're not hating on you. It's just part of our lives that we're talking about.
Well, if you look at some of the tweets that like get sent to Gavin because he's a little bit annoying in videos, it's like people want him to be raped until he dies of internal bleeding and stuff like that. Like that's the type of stuff they send. And the Rooster Teeth guys will be like, "Oh, that's cringeworthy. I'm digging with a mining pick," and like that's the max of what they'll do like against fans.
Yeah, and like the guy he replied to was not being mean. He was saying, well, we. And I don't think he was talking about something like that. He was saying people's comments about some of the videos, complaints or whatever, that, maybe it's legitimate or whatever. And Jeff's like, maybe it is, but we have to deal with it every day. He talked about having to record and talk professionally for 40 hours in 1 week. And that's, I mean, I can personally see how that would be extremely difficult. I've tried to do it for like 3 or 4 hours at a time in a day, and it's just like, there's a certain point where after you've tried to be entertaining for, like 3 or 4 hours, you're just like, I don't have anything else to say.
Do you guys get any hate mail or anything like that?
I've gotten a few pieces of hate mail, nothing all that major. We've gotten some major stuff, like whenever we spoiled something on Breaking Bad. I'm still not sure what, because the guy blocked us and just went kind of nuclear. We've gotten some stuff because people claimed that we were being too feminist and all this.
Too feminist?
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Like, I don't, you know what? I don't care about that.
I think I listened to that episode where you guys kind of talked about everybody dies in Breaking Bad. There, I just spoiled everything for you. No, I'm teasing, of course.
They all make it out, and there's happy bunnies and rainbows and stuff.
Yes,
it's good. Everybody does meth, and it's fine.
The last episode is Walter and Jesse going to Bed Bath & Beyond for an hour.
Someone should write
Shopping
that.
For sheets.
Jesse, we need to cook.
Some pancakes.
Get some hot dogs. Look at this grill.
Have you guys watched? I'm not going to spoil anything, but have you guys watched Breaking Bad from beginning to end?
I have.
All right. Easily my favorite part of that entire show. I won't say when or where it happens. It's when Walter is telling somebody, "Say my name," and it's like, "Well, you're what?" He's like, "You guys know who I am. Say my name." And then when someone goes Heisenberg, he just goes, "You're goddamn right." Oh, I probably played that 5 times, laughing my balls off every single time. One of the greatest line readings ever.
It's so ridiculous too. Like, that's a ridiculous thing for somebody to say. That could have come off in the hands of a lesser actor. That could have been just. I mean, you said you were laughing. I mean, I don't think it's meant to be funny in like a.
It's funny.
Well, they were trying to have another moment like the "I am the one who knocks," which gave me chills. Like, I watched that scene probably 10 times because it was just so potent.
There was always a sense of black humor that was running through that show anyway.
Yeah.
But they kept up until the end. Even in the last episode, there's some great moments, that sort of like, even though it's getting really serious.
The whole thing with the snipers?
See, now you are getting into spoilers.
No, I'm not. That's not ruining anything. I'm just saying that part. That is that's a perfect encapsulation of the black humor that is in that show. That has been there since the first episode, despite how ridiculously dark that show has gotten.
And I think that's kind of a reflection of real life. I mean, no matter what sort of dark, no matter what you do, no matter how heavy your job is, somewhere somebody's going to make a joke. You might be cleaning up Holocaust survivors or whatever, but somebody has to make some humor somewhere in that, because otherwise it's, you're losing your humanity. And obviously that's kind of what that show's about, but still, like, that's very true.
I'm talking about a fictional show. You're talking about, a World War II atrocity. All right.
Yeah, man. My grandpa died in Auschwitz.
Jesus.
He fell out of a guard tower.
That's so wrong. I'm gonna get.
Wait, what Tony said was so wrong? You're just like, you cleaned up the ashes in Auschwitz, and you're just like, it's really dusty in here, isn't it, guys?
You don't think that people had to deal with that with humor? You don't think that anybody?
No, I'm sure they did. There's an entire subreddit dedicated to like pictures of Nazis being happy and holding puppies and things like that.
I'm not saying that they were making jokes maybe about the ashes or whatever, in the midst of that kind of horror, somebody somewhere had to be cracking some jokes.
Well, someone had to have been like, "Oh man, you'd think that these." With all the money they had, they could afford a maid.
No, look, Al, you're talking to somebody who used to do child molestation jokes when he did comedy. So, like, I appreciate it. It was just such a leap from, talking about Breaking Bad to the Holocaust, where it just kind of took you back for a second. I was like, oh, wow. Al's going for the gold here, the fucking long jump. Ooh, my first F-bomb. I made it. Hour and 7 minutes.
Yeah, I had one like in the first 3 minutes of the episode.
Yeah, you did.
Oh, yeah. You just dropped that right on the table. It was like, there you go, guys. Work with that.
You had the mother in front of it, too.
Oh, he nailed that hard.
To be fair, it was a parody of Danny.
I know. And to be fair, I was a little turned on when you did that, too.
Okay. Did we get any questions, Tony?
I actually just got a question about 6 seconds ago on my phone when Hannah realized that we were recording the episode. This is actually from Caleb Newell, or Priority Default. Albert, why do you like Asylum films? This was not answered before. Why do you like them? Angry, exclamation point, interrobang, question mark, etc.
You know what? I'm retweeting his question. Why the hell do you like those movies?
Okay, here's the thing. You know how in a lot of movies there's the, like, suspension of disbelief? There's this sort of wall that the movie has to build. That's
kind of like the irradiated wasteland in Dredd?
Okay. I don't get the reference there, but sure, why not? No, like...
It's a walled city. They're all
yes,
like...
there are literal walls. The movie has to... If a movie wants to be good, it has to create this world for you to live in. It may not be anything like the real world, and that bugs me to death when people complain that movies aren't exactly like the real world because, you know, they're creating their own world. But in an Asylum film, you don't get that. You don't have the artifice of trying to create... It's like seeing the raw components of story just laid out there. There's no, like, barrier between you and what is going on screen. You see everything. You see the acting happening. You see the special effects happening. You know, you see the story happening. And you see all the moving pieces. And there's something about having all of that artifice stripped away that can be entertaining. Where, especially if the story itself still moves forward in a way that, you know, I like. You know, if it's boring, it's boring. Like, that's just something I can't handle. But when you've got something like Mega Shark versus Mecha Shark, and you understand that they're just doing it for the shock value, not even shock value isn't the right word, but, you know, they're like, hey, here's a giant mechanical shark, and oh yeah, it turns into a tank at one point. I mean, that's the kind of thing I want to see in a movie. There is no other place I can go to get a movie where a shark is a robot and also turns into a tank that's still a shark and a robot.
Even if it makes no goddamn sense whatsoever.
Even if it makes no sense. Why does it need to make sense? It's a shark turning into a robot. Of course it doesn't make sense, Danny.
But yet
That's the point.
But yet when you talk about a lot of the movies and reviews, you really kind of go into the minutia of why, like, this doesn't work and, like, how come they don't explain this? But yet you watch the Asylum movies, and I've watched a few of them really just because of you, Al. And the biggest thing that I actually don't like about them is that they aspire from the get-go to make a bad movie and hope that it's like an entertaining bad movie. Like Evil Dead 2 is a tremendously bad movie if you look at it from what a typical movie is. But it's a cult classic and it's an amazing film because there's such a sense of fun and like they didn't sit down and go like, we're going to try to make a cult movie. We're going to try to make a deliberately humorous bad movie. It's why I don't like the Sharknado movies. Was Sharknado Asylum?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, it's why I didn't really like those. Like it was trying. They're always trying so hard to do like a bad. They're all trying to do Plan 9 from outer space, and you can't do Plan 9 from outer space. Plan 9 was done by Ed Wood, who so completely believed he was a great filmmaker, and he wasn't, and that's what makes his movies great. Whereas
so it's like a Tommy Wiseau type thing with The Room.
Yeah, that is a fantastically horrendously bad movie, but there's something watchable because you hear the stories about Tommy Wiseau, who like spent years raising the money. He somehow got $3 or $4 million to make that ungodly film, and
he was independently wealthy. Read the book; it's an amazing book.
We're actually going to be reviewing the movie and the book here sometime soon.
The Greg Sestero book. I so want to read that book.
The Disaster Artist is what it's called, by the way. We'll be linking to that on our notes.
If you read that one, maybe we'll have you back on for that particular episode.
I love stories about I love books about the making of movies that had very troubled productions and things like that. But I don't know with the Asylum ones. I don't like how they're trying to make the next Plan 9. They're trying to make the next Evil Dead 2. If they were trying to make the movies as best as they could and it came out like crap, and it's like, well, what do you want us to do? Like we're doing the best we can. I would like them. A little bit more.
But I have to dispute that a little bit because there are movies where Abraham Lincoln versus Zombies was an authentically fun movie for me.
I will totally agree with you on that. I really did enjoy that one a lot.
Well, I'm glad that we can agree on that. But here's the thing. I don't think that they're trying to make... I disagree with your premise. I disagree that they're trying to make... They're shooting for that camp audience. Like I said, that you can't... Hollywood is not going to make a movie with a giant shark that's a robot. But I think that they're trying to make that premise, with the budget that they have, the best movie that can make it. It's not... Right. I mean, I think that the people there aren't like, oh, let's make a bad movie. They understand what they're doing. They understand that they have, that they have very limited budget. They understand how people look at their films. They understand that a lot of people don't like their films. But I think the people there are dedicated to what they're doing. They're dedicated to their art as far as it goes. They're
some movies they're definitely like that with them. I like the Abraham Lincoln versus Zombies. That is right. Definitely one of those that
you can look at that and you can say the special effects aren't great. Some of the acting is not awesome. What's his face's beard is hilariously bad and it shifts halfway through.
And yet the ending was completely awesome.
But they did the best that they could with what they had. They don't have a lot of money to make these films. They're making them for very little money and saying, okay, we're going to make a profit. It's profit-driven stuff, and if you have a problem with, I think most movies are made to make some kind of money, so I can't complain too much. And they haven't ever lost money on a film, so say whatever you want to about that. But it's not, to me, it's not that cynical. It's not like, there are some movies I do understand that I feel like that there are other studios that actually come at it with that. Like, there's a movie that came out recently called Big Ass Spider. And the advertising for that was, tongue-in-cheek, you like Sharknado or whatever. I don't even know if it was when Sharknado was out, but it was sort of advertising to that group of people, and that turned me off because I don't feel like the Asylum does that. I don't feel like they're intentionally making bad movies. They understand they have limitations. They hire the actors they can afford. They hire the directors they can afford. They hire the editors they can afford and the CG people they can afford, and they can't afford that much. So it doesn't end up being that great, but they have such crazy premises. And
absolutely. Last week you were also talking about how they have to respect you as the viewer a little bit, like if Sharktopus that just straight up was making fun of you for watching the movie, and that was just going too far.
Yeah, sometimes they do kind of they wink at obviously their whole company is really just a big wink at the audience, and I do feel like that a lot of their movies are what Al's saying, but there's sometimes where I like with the Sharknado movies really. I really feel like they were just like, oh, well, we can... It's not coming from a personal artistic place. Regardless of how bad that personal artistic sense is, it's just like there's something about them trying to get you in on the joke as opposed to them inviting you to be on the joke. Do you know what I mean?
I understand that, but even in Sharknado, all right, and I don't love Sharknado, and I don't love it because, for the main reason I don't love most Asylum weather films, and that's because weather is really hard to do on that really, really crappy budget.
Absolutely.
But there are stuff in that movie that I really like. I like the waitress character so much, and I like her character arc. I really enjoyed how she went from being kind of the standard... Let me talk here.
We're talking about character arcs and
she has a character arc. I know. All right, she goes from being the standard bimbo, kind of like she's into the much older dude, and you think, oh, okay, this is very exploitative. Why? And then as the movie progresses, you actually see her realize, man, this guy's way older than me. He has kids. He has an ex-wife. I really need to rethink my priorities, and she goes through that character shift where she matures and she becomes something greater. And in Sharknado 2, which I have not finished watching because that one actually takes itself too seriously. I feel like that they actually take the concept of the Sharknado so seriously that it's has some issues. But in the second one, they take the sort of the main guy and they focus on him, and he's got these. Especially that first scene. The first scene in Sharknado 2 I really liked because it showed his sort of PTSD after the fact, and he's they're coming through the clouds and he actually sees the sharks, and there's this moment of him not doing anything because he thinks he's just flashing back. And you know, and they even have a moment where they like go to the Twilight Zone episode where the guy sees the gremlin on the plane, and he's like, "There's something on the wing. There's something on the wing." And the guy looks out, and there's nothing there. And you kind of really see Thunder Levin, I think, does a good job. Thunder Levin's the guy who writes those movies. He does the best that he can to sort of put that character type of stuff in this ridiculous premise movie. And I think, again, for me,
his name is Thunder Levin?
Thunder Levin.
Thunder Levin. All right.
Yes.
I heard Thunder Levin.
Yeah, I was like, wait a minute. This is the guy who wrote it or directed it? I actually didn't even know the name. The guy who wrote it.
Yeah.
All right.
It's his real name too. I looked it up on IMDb. But I think he does a good job of
Thunder.
He says that's his real name too. He doesn't want to go into it, according to the IMDb page. But I think he does a good job of putting that stuff in a ridiculous movie. And if by sort of stripping down the layers and being able to see all the moving parts, it's like in regular storytelling, you don't want that. You don't want to be aware of what's going on. But in a certain sense, like there's this, for me anyway, there's a fascination with having all that artifice kind of, being laid bare, and then you can see, okay, this works, this doesn't work. Pacing here is a problem. And obviously the acting in these are mostly bad, but I don't really care about that.
Of course, Tara Reid's in them, so it is going to be bad.
But you get all those sort of the vision of all those moving parts, and for me, that I'm really interested in that, and I find them, entertaining for, like I said, it's like Stonewall Jackson's hilariously bad beard and Abraham Lincoln versus Zombies. I laugh my butt off at that. It's just, this is hilarious. It shifts, it's this great big long, obviously fake beard, and then like right towards like the third act of the movie, it shifts to the super like billowy beard, and you can tell that something happened to the other one, and they just like went and grabbed one. It's so funny, and it's not something that I don't think they could have planned that.
And it's a ridiculous concept too, and that's why like the Asylum Abraham Lincoln works better than the actual Abraham Lincoln versus Vampires, because they took that very seriously, and sometimes that works. Like in Guardians of the Galaxy, they take it very seriously. Like everybody is just trying to. They're not winking at the audience, despite the references and the very overt Star Wars and Raiders of the Lost Ark influences. But in Abraham Lincoln versus Vampires, Vampire Hunter, there's never a wink, there's never any of that, but it's this, with such a ridiculous premise, you need to have a little bit of jokiness. Like they try to tell like a very serious story about Abraham Lincoln, whose family was killed by vampires. But in Abraham Lincoln versus Zombies, it's just like, our 16th president fought zombies before he was killed by Booth. So, I'm totally seeing your side about Asylum.
Can I make a counterpoint about that, though? I actually respect, and this is bad, I know people are going to be mad at me for using that word, respect Abraham Lincoln versus Zombies more, because in my mind there is a sense where it actually takes the concept more serious than Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter. Mm-hmm. Not in the tone. The tone is obviously very silly. I mean, it's the Asylum. But they actually do have the themes of the Civil War being presented as serious things. The Abraham Lincoln says, this zombie problem is, as sort of like a representation of the slavery problem, in that it's still hanging on even though it should be dead by now.
And much more than Vampire Hunter did with the whole slavery. Much more than the Vampire Hunter did with the slavery thing.
I hate that so much. I hate what they did with the vampire, because they almost excused it. It's like, there was slavery, but it was vampires that did it.
It's like,
it's offensive to me.
It's like, I know a Russian is directing this, but it's like, this is still kind of a sensitive issue here, guys.
So, I mean, in that sense, like, even there, I think Abraham Lincoln versus Zombies, even though it's fun and it's campy and it's, it understands what it is, I also think that whoever wrote that, and I don't know who the writer of Abraham Lincoln versus Zombies was.
I'll get it for you right now.
But whoever the writer was of Abraham Lincoln versus Zombies, they didn't just like gloss over the fact that this is about the Civil War. This is about slavery. Even the whole thing between Abraham Lincoln and General Stonewall Jackson, like, that conflict is a very real conflict that, would have played out that way in that situation. Obviously, it would have played out more realistically, and obviously zombies don't actually happen, but the fact that these two guys don't trust each other, especially Stonewall Jackson doesn't trust Abraham Lincoln, but eventually he has to learn to trust him, all that's played a lot more, I think, seriously and with an understanding that the Civil War was a real thing that really happened. Even Abraham Lincoln himself in Abraham Lincoln vs. Zombies is more true to life to the real character than the Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter. Abraham Lincoln was not madly in love with Mary Todd. She was kind of weird and crazy. And they play it that way in Abraham Lincoln vs. Zombies, not so much in Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter. They throw in the love story I hate that movie so much.
Do you just watch Mystery Science Theater 3000 and wish the silhouettes weren't there just so you could watch the bad movie?
It depends on the movie. Sometimes I'll watch a movie and I'll be like, oh, this is fun. Like even if they weren't making fun of it, I would be having a fun time. And those are actually the best ones because they add the jokes on top of that, and I'm actually not hating the movie. When the movie on Mystery Science Theater is boring, even they have a hard time saving it with their humor.
Like Manos, The Hands of Fate. Have you ever watched that one?
No, I have not. I want to.
Oh, wow. If you want to see bad movie making, just on even ignoring the silhouettes alone that's good for a laugh. It's astonishing.
I really want to start getting Manos, Hands of Fate, which is hilarious because Manos means hands in Spanish. So it's hands of Fate.
The Hands of Fate. It's not the best Mystery Science Theater episode. Like if you were introducing somebody to MST3K, that's not the one to start with. But if you love the show, that is one to watch because even they just kind of are like, what the hell do we do with this? Like this is bad.
You know what's going to be better than that though?
What?
Zombievers.
I am kind of looking forward to Zombievers.
What the hell is Zombievers?
Well, they're beavers,
Zombievers.
But they're also zombies. See, Danny? That's how that works.
Oh, I got it. I understood like the portmanteau of the word. What I don't get is this another Asylum movie? Is this like a Justin Bieber kind of thing, or?
It's a horror comedy based on a script by Al Kaplan, Jordan Rubin, and John Kaplan.
It's not the Asylum.
It's
made some hilarious posters for the Academy Awards, though. Did you see that, Tony? The posters they made?
I did.
Abraham Lincoln vs. Zombies the story was by Carl T. Hirsch and J. Lauren Proctor, and the screenplay was written by Richard Shankman.
Okay. None of those guys ring a bell with me.
All right. Well,
I know Thunder Levin and Jose Prendez.
Well, how could you forget Thunder Levin? I want to buy a horse and race him and just call him Thunder Levin.
We've actually we've definitely seen worse names and worse books from people. What was that one where it was a vampire story where the guy had a hand in his vagina or a vagina in his hand, something like that. What was that?
Vampire vaginas?
Yeah.
Was it called Every Guy's Dream?
Vegan vampire vaginas. That was it.
Vegan Wait, what?
I don't see what the confusion is, Tony. It's called Vegan Vampire Vaginas.
I just couldn't remember the title. I'm just saying, we've seen some pretty absurd stuff on here.
I actually read, the intro copy that they had on Amazon for that one.
You should do an intro read for that one like you did for Sharkano.
It's too smutty, though.
That's true.
It's very much, it's weird because it's not super tongue-in-cheek, but it keeps going there, sometimes sexy times happen, but we're going to have this really bizarre fantasy world for them to happen in. Really bizarre.
Oh, my God. I would love to just listen to Al read smut for a half an hour. That would be so hysterical.
Especially whenever he tries to censor himself if it's, very, very vulgar smut.
The thing is, you would censor, what?
You would more censor yourself over, cursing than you would about, actual vulgar smut.
No, I would totally, if there's a sex scene, I'm not reading that. At the opening of Vegan Vampire Vaginas, there is a scene where a dude takes the girl home, she like
hold on. Say this slower.
She picks him up in a bar. They go home.
Our GarageBand has a good loop for this.
She goes to town on him in the downtown area, and then she blows her brains out in the process.
Oh, that got sober real quick.
Yeah.
That was like a record scratch moment. What's wrong with you?
Wait, I just got totally lost. What? So explain that.
She blew her head off after she went down on him.
No, while she's going down, Tony, during the process.
Did she take any of him with her?
No, this is she's trying to fulfill the prophecy of transferring the vagina into his hand.
See, this is like I keep imagining something
like he's like, what is this? He wakes up and he has the vagina in his hand.
I'm so
in an
involved.
alternate universe.
Oh my God! I'm so involved with my girl with that. I'm just going like, babe, I got to fulfill the prophecy. Let's keep going. God damn it!
He's not even in a normal world to begin with. Like the world he starts out with, he has there are force fields to keep dragons out of Boston. And then, he ends up in an alternate universe where there are no force fields, but there's, vampires running around everywhere.
I have to read this.
Did you guys ever see the deleted scenes for Hancock, or the director's cut?
I didn't even see Hancock.
Well, there's a part where he's hooking up with this girl, and he's like, I need to tell you this. Whenever I climb the mountain, you need to get away, or you will die.
You know what? I know what you're talking about.
That's just what it reminds me of. It's he gets off and it's put shotgun holes in the ceiling.
They went there with Man of Steel, Woman of Paper?
Pretty much. They went there. Except it's Will Smith this time. The Black Man of Steel.
Oh, we are way over time on this one, guys.
Yeah, and we also didn't talk anything about Dredd, really.
Hey, look, this is the 100th episode, guys. Let's revel in it.
We're letting our hair
2 hours. Why not?
Why not? Because I'm getting tired and running out of things to say is why not.
Yeah, because we've descended into, just crazy dirtiness and all sorts of fun things.
I was going to complain about commercials on YouTube, but I think I'm gonna avoid that because it's not going to be anywhere near as satisfying as what we've already talked about.
Are there any more questions?
We did have one more question, though.
Oh, okay.
The question is, which episode of the podcast is your favorite? And that comes from Hannah Elizabeth.
Man.
It's so hard to remember.
Maximum Overdrive.
I'm trying to remember, there are moments in the podcast. Most recently, the one that sticks in my mind is when Tony started rapping. I know that was 2 episodes ago, but I just lost
episode 98.
I just lost it at that point. I was like, people are going to be so weirded out by it.
So far, the reaction has been interesting. No one has said that it was terrible, and no one has said that it was bad. They just said that it was.
John Jones said it was terrible in his roundabout, polite way.
Yeah, probably.
Which episode did you rap in?
It was something. It was episode 98.
And I dropped the beat.
Yeah,
that's why my Twitter handle is now changed to Al Sweet Beats Berg.
Yeah, I was curious as to why I was seeing Sweet Beats between your name.
I don't have any other freestyles all loaded up right now. I guess it's not a freestyle; it's just a rap. But yeah, you guys aren't going to hear it this time.
Oh,
maybe someday.
This is not the special musical episode of the podcast.
No. We've had a lot of interesting musical moments. Episode 54, you sang your song that was the alternate timeline for some kid's dinosaur TV show.
Oh, the dinosaur train?
Fanfare. Yeah, yeah.
Once upon a time, there was a mom. Her name was Mrs. Pteranodon, etc.
Yeah. And, just moments like that, or the moment where we had where we couldn't get Don't Stop Believin' to, actually play.
That was the best. That might, now that I think back on it. See, this is the hard thing, because it's hard to remember, but that was hilarious when that happened to me. I can never tell, what's funny for other people. I just know what I find funny, and that, obviously, that was very, very good, because you just, you played it, and you didn't realize that the Don't Stop Believin' part was, 2 minutes in, so it just kept going and going.
Waiting.
I'm so glad I don't listen to every single episode of you guys now.
So disrespectful.
If I had to hear a rapping Tony and you two singing "Don't Stop Believing," I almost took my head.
No, we weren't singing "Don't Stop." Like
video,
it was a question.
Oh, that's fine.
If you could only use 2 words for the rest of it
was 3 words
for the rest of the year, your life, 3 words. And Al said something, and
my response was, if I can only use 3 words for the rest of my life, they would be "kill me now."
And so I pulled out my iPad and I put it right next to the microphone, and I was like, "Oh, this is going to be awesome!" So I pull up Journey, and it just keeps going and going and going. I'm like, "Damn it! I just don't stop believing, damn it!"
I would say what my 3 words would be, but you would bleep every one of them out. So
go ahead and do it.
No, I can't.
Yeah, that's okay.
I'm embarrassed. We're fine. I don't.
The best part of the "Don't Stop Believing" thing was when we finally got to it, we talked over it. Tony talked over the "Don't Stop Believing." Like he waited for 2 minutes to get to it.
It's actually a YouTube video now. Like we actually put that clip on YouTube.
Why do you sound so disgusted, Al? You're like, oh God, we put something on YouTube and it might be a hit.
No. For one thing, it's not going to be a hit. For another thing, I'm not disgusted. I'm just tired and enjoying sort of thinking about. This is not my 100 episodes. It sucks. And this is just my. I can't believe we've been doing this for 100 episodes. It's hilarious.
And it's impressive. You got this far. I'm sure you guys have had a lot of listeners, and the ones that are vocal about it are very vocal about it. I always notice that stuff on Twitter. I don't really use it that much, but
throughout this whole episode, we've been kind of buried in stuff about people talking about their favorite episodes, and it's been a lot of fun to watch. It's part of the reason why I've been quiet, even though I probably shouldn't be whenever all this is going on.
Has anybody said anything that you wanted to shout out?
Give me a second to find it while you guys talk.
Oh, okay. Okay, now we got a rift, Danny. It's hard for me to call somebody else on the podcast. Your name is Danny.
Well, it's all your fault that I am, involved with you guys. It was about 2 years ago. I think you followed me on Twitter, and then I followed you back because at the time I had 20-something followers or something like that, and you said something about Prometheus. And I remember you and I kind of had a back and forth about it. Nothing we both kind of in agreement, much like the podcast has been so far right now. And then Tony got involved, and then he started following me.
That movie was so disappointing.
Yeah. For someone who doesn't like Alien, that was disappointing. How do you think I, fucking felt?
It was a bad movie.
Yes,
forget about how it is with the Alien universe. It's just Alien was so slow and methodical, and you got that these people were actually in space and took their job seriously. And then Prometheus let's go down to the planet right now. We've been waiting all our lives.
Do you want to know something cool about Alien? Because I know that one of the most maligned aspects of the movie is that they don't have developed characters. Ridley Scott, it was his second film. He directed the film. And for every single actor, he wrote an entire biography for every single character and gave them to each actor so they can read and know their backstory. Harry Dean Stanton, who played Brett, he said it's the first and only time that anything like that's ever happened. And Ridley Scott always said if you cast the movie right, then 50% of your problems as a director go right out the window. And I've always thought that was a very fascinating thing, and it's always something that I've always took as for my writing. Even though 95% of whatever backstory I come up for a character doesn't end up on the page, I always write out what this character's entire backstory is because of learning that anecdote from Alien, because you never know when you might use something.
I make stuff up as I go along. I'm not that good. Same thing with world building. I've had some people several times write to me and be like, "Are you going to do anything more with this world?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" I just I threw something in interesting when I felt like I needed something interesting. I didn't think any of this stuff out ahead of time. It's not this enduring thing in my mind. I'm going to keep going with this.
Yeah, my backstory characters come out really later. Once I start really getting into writing whatever I'm writing, that's when I can do it. But I know George R.R. Martin, who writes the Game of Thrones books, he's someone who's like that, where he just kind of makes everything up as he goes along. and then he just ends up having like this gargantuan world. Whereas like Tolkien planned everything out beforehand.
I mean, I'm not saying I make everything up as I go along, but I don't have 100% like backstory planned. I'm working on a story that I've been talking about for like a year now, and it's going to be another year before it's done at least. But the death and life of the human electrode, and I did a lot of planning before I started writing that. I wrote out stuff about like, okay, these are the character's motivations. These are what he's. This is sort of his main conflict. This is the world. A little bit of like. The macro level of the world, but I didn't dig down into, like, what do they call their currency until literally the second draft or anything like that. I just kind of throw stuff in there like, this is a little bit of an alternate universe, but it's still kind of like our world enough that, I mean, you're not going to have dragons showing up or something without people being weirded out. It's got superheroes, and it's kind of like this rundown city, and, I kind of just throw details at it as it's going.
The only time I've ever been asked to expand on one of my own worlds was for that kaiju story I wrote. Like, I've gotten a lot of responses, a few emails about that.
What was that?
That was a good story. No, that was me that did that. That was a good story. I like that one. I felt bad that I didn't actually vote for that one.
Did you not?
There were a lot of people that
voted for the other
one
because the other one was better. No offense, Tony, but holy crap, the death of Ragnarok was awesome.
Yeah,
Ragnarok's a remembrance. I'm sorry. But
here we are still talking about. Here we are still talking about Tony's kaiju story, where
Tony brought it up. Of course we're talking about it.
Well, of course he did. He should be proud of that. That was like a very good short story where like it just gave you just enough of the details of the world. It was almost like a sequel to Pacific Rim. What did you guys think of Pacific Rim, by the way?
I enjoyed it, but I didn't love it.
Yeah, all right.
I just completely went like full on, not paying attention to anything else, engrossed in the movie, so I loved it.
Yeah, that was definitely a movie that was like, it was almost like a parody where with all the characters and the character arcs, like, it's like, how are you taking this seriously?
I liked that the visuals were taken seriously, but.
Absolutely.
We
were stalling for you, Tony. Are you ready yet?
Yeah, there's a few on here that are that mention things that I really did enjoy. John Jones talks about how episode 81, our second interview with Bill Oberst Jr., that might be my favorite one. But actually, episode 80 before that might be the best review we've ever done. Around episode 60, it seemed like whenever I'm doing all this editing, that we're actually getting really into in-depth reviews that aren't loaded with spoilers, that aren't just a bunch of summary. We started getting into the real nitty-gritty of what being a critic's about. And I feel like that at episode 80, whenever we talked about Children of Sorrow, we put a lot of effort into that. We talked about that movie for about 45 minutes straight with almost no deviations on it because it was that heavy of a movie. And I felt like that was a good example of our skills. And then getting to talk to Bill Oberst after that was it was awesome.
That
getting
was
to talk
to
him
movie.
About.
That was so depressing.
Because, our first interview was just lighthearted. We talked a lot about Abraham Lincoln versus Zombies Tonight. That was the high we were coming off of, and he came to our blog and left a comment, and I got the interview set up from there. And the second time through, it was definitely a different flavor. And if we were to do Clowns of the Damned or something like that next, I'm sure it would be an entirely different interview just because of the flavor of the movie that kind of put onto that interview. I've really enjoyed all of our interviews. Talking to Joseph's been awesome. That's spawned a really strong friendship. Talking to Eric Luke from who did Quillhammer, he's at Quillhammer, but he did Interference, and that was excellent. John Jones also talks about how much he loved our episode on Rubber, which is episode 43.
That was I like that episode.
Yeah, I did too. Rubber was just an entertaining movie. Danny, did you see that one?
I did. I remember liking it.
See, here's the thing. I don't love Rubber, but there's a lot of stuff I like about it. I really appreciate the cinematography. I think it looks amazing, especially for what it is and how inexpensive it was, and that kind of encourages me as somebody who wants to make some movies at some point.
I like the guy's monologue at the beginning. That was easily my favorite part. It was no reason.
That's probably the best part.
It was Oh, go ahead, Al.
No, the intro to that as well, with him, the car coming up and knocking down the chairs and how surreal that is. Yeah. And then the fact that the monologue actually kind of undercuts itself because it talks about stuff that there is actually good reasons for. So, anyway.
But just a few shout-outs for people that are talking about this right now. Like, Rich Alex is talking about our moment where we had, like, the Don't Stop Believin' part. Jen is talking about that as well. Like, there's just a lot of cool moments that are out there, and it's so awesome to see, like, the people that are coming back every week, the new people that are showing up and talking to us, and just we've had some cool people on. We've met a lot of interesting friends we would have had no way of meeting otherwise. Like, it's become its own thing.
And by the way, that for me is the best part of the podcast. Not any individual episode, but all of you guys out there who listen and talk to us and tweet at us and make stuff based on the podcast, that we couldn't afford to hire you to make, but that you
like our Sharktopus, or Octoshark. I always screw that up. Yeah, like when Jed Gautreau sent us like some of the first things of that, like even whenever it was orange and it was like colored like an octopus, like I was so happy at that. I was like, this is amazing. Like
I showed that to my parents the other day, and they were like, "Wow, that's really cool." I was like, "I know it's really cool." Somebody said that somebody wrote that because of something we said on the podcast. And that was just like a really great moment for me. So
who did make that, by the way?
Jen?
That would be Jen Gautreau.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know her last name. I feel bad now.
I think it's pronounced Gautreau, but yeah. Well, she's an awesome lady from Louisiana. She does a lot of really cool art. She's got her own shop out there. I'll try to link to it in the links. It's through TeePublic, but she's got some awesome stuff. She did the logo for the podcast as well, which definitely deserves much more than we can afford to pay her.
Yes. And we've got some super fans: Hannah Elizabeth, John Jones, Rich Alex, Joseph Devon, who's practically a co-producer on the show at this point. Just a lot of people. I know I forgot somebody. Obviously, you, Danny, you're great, even though you're not really listening to the podcast too much, but you're on Twitter and you're talking to us, and it's just
Donald
it's great to have. Donald Eichflux, who has been.
Ooh, that's a good one too.
Who keeps doing the "in case you missed it" posts, and I keep on to tweet him saying, "Hey, I really appreciate you doing that and talking about the stuff that you like." But he's
the one who started this whole thing tonight. He started the whole talk about your top 10 favorite episodes, and he's trying to compile lists. He was saying that episode 60 is his favorite because that's the one he actually started with, and that was shortly after he won a short story contest with us. He's become a friend of the podcast and a friend of ours. I barely get to talk to him just because, over this summer I kind of disappeared from Twitter, but I don't know. It's just amazing.
Anyway, we've gone way over time with this one, you guys, but we really love you all. We appreciate you listening. Super quick reminder about that we are supported by you, and if you want to throw us a couple bucks, that would greatly help support the podcast, and we appreciate everybody who supports us. And if you don't support us, we appreciate you too.
Yeah,
want to say bye, Danny?
That's just at humanechoes.com. If you click on the tip jar, it's a quick PayPal link. Or if you just want to spread the word, go to the Writers Arena, check out our stories, just all that sort of stuff. If you're listening and you're talking to us and you're participating, that's more than enough. But it's also awesome whenever we can pay the bills and go see awesome movies like Guardians of the Galaxy and stuff like that and talk about them for you guys.
And if you want to give me money for no reason whatsoever, you're very welcome to give me money as well.
Yeah, just go ahead and give them your phone number and address. We'll see what happens.
Yes, you can hit me up on Twitter at Danny Brophy. That's really all I have at this point. I also write a article on your guys' fine website on a semi-weekly basis.
But anyway, I think next week we're going to be reviewing Constantine or something like that.
I don't know how many things there are like Constantine, but okay.
Oh, we're 100 episodes in. We'll see if we get to another 100. Thank you guys so much for your support and listening, and you guys have an awesome one.
Bye.
Bye-bye.